Today, we're uncovering the true architecture of world power, and trust me, it is not what you think. Armies? Nukes? Look, while military might is obviously a massive deal, the world's real, tangible power, the kind that literally keeps your lights on, puts food on your table, and fuels your car, is actually locked inside 14 tiny, highly vulnerable lines drawn across our map. These super vulnerable pathways are what we call choke points. They're these incredibly narrow maritime routes that essentially act as the main arteries of global trade. If even one of these doors were choked off or forced closed today, by tomorrow morning, the entire global economy would start to suffocate. We are talking instant fuel shortages, medical supply chains totally breaking down, and widespread starvation. These little geographical pathways basically hold the entire world hostage. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the world's maritime choke points, the Middle East oil route, Europe and the Black Sea, Asia and the Taiwan flashpoint, and finally, Panama and the routes of the future. Section 1. The world's maritime choke points, dictating the flow of the world's economic lifeblood. Moving right along to Section 2. The Middle East's oil route, the home of the world's greatest treasure. The sheer scale of vulnerability here is just staggering. Take the Strait of Hormuz, nestled right between Iran and Oman. It is incredibly narrow, literally only 33 kilometers wide. Yet it handles over 30% of the world's oil supply every single day. Millions of barrels squeeze through here to reach the US, Europe, and Asia. So a single blockade by Iran, just parking their military there and closing this tiny 33-kilometer door, would instantly send global petrol prices absolutely skyrocketing. Moving just a bit further along, we hit Bab el-Mandeb, situated right between Yemen and Djibouti. Now, in Arabic, this actually translates to the Gate of Tears. Historically, it earned this really terrifying name because of deadly pirate attacks and incredibly treacherous waves. And, well, today, it remains just as tearful. We're seeing modern Houthi attacks on passing ships, effectively threatening to just slam this door shut. When ships can't safely pass through to the Red Sea, they're forced into these wildly expensive, week-long detours all the way around the entire African continent. That means millions of dollars in extra fuel and weeks of delay, a massive cost that ultimately causes crippling inflation for everyday people like you and me. $54 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering financial hit the global economy took when just one of these choke points failed recently. You might remember this. Back in March 2021, a single ship, the Ever Given, got stuck and completely blocked the Suez Canal. For just 6 days, the main route connecting the Red Sea to the Mediterranean was totally shut down. $54 billion in essential goods, food, and machinery were just stranded. It really just goes to show how incredibly fragile this whole system actually is. Section 3. Europe and the Black Sea. Empires vie for control over narrow straits. First up here, we have the super narrow Strait of Gibraltar between Spain and Morocco, connecting the Atlantic right into the Mediterranean. Get this. If you stand on one side, you can literally see the other continent. Today, the UK maintains a military base there, effectively controlling half of all European-African trade. Then you've got the English Channel, right between the UK and France. Over 400 commercial ships cross this channel every single day to reach massive ports like Rotterdam. Historically, the British Navy's control of this vital waterway was literally the key to saving Europe and stopping Hitler's advance. Now, deep inside the Mediterranean, we find this massive geopolitical balancing act, the Bosporus and Dardanelles Straits. Under international law, Turkey holds the keys to these doors, connecting the Black Sea to the outside world. But on the other side of the equation, we have Russia. Russia has massive coastlines, sure, but for most of the year, they are completely frozen solid. The Black Sea is their only year-round warm water access to the globe. So these straits are an absolute red line for Russia's survival in global trade. And Turkey? They cleverly leverage this geographical monopoly, basically forcing global superpowers to keep them happy to guarantee safe passage. All right, Section 4, Asia and the Taiwan flashpoint, busiest sea routes and geopolitical danger zones. Strategists actually call this the Malacca Dilemma. The Strait of Malacca, passing right by Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, sees a whopping 25% of all global sea trade. That's huge. For China, this narrow passage is quite literally a matter of life and death, since most of their oil and exports travel right through it. Their absolute existential fear is that in the event of a conflict, the U.S. Navy could blockade this strait, cutting off China's supply lines completely and suffocating their economy. This massive vulnerability is actually a major driver behind China's massive Belt and Road Initiative. as they desperately seek land-based backups. Meanwhile, just sitting there as the gatekeeper of this incredibly busy door has made the tiny nation of Singapore unbelievably wealthy. But what happens if Malacca gets blocked, or just too congested? Well, let's look at Indonesia's backup routes. First, you have the Sunda Strait. Problem is, it's dangerously shallow and actually features active underwater volcanoes. No thanks. But then there's the Lombok Strait. This one is deep water, which is a total blessing for the massive oil tankers that physically cannot squeeze their way through Malacca. Because Indonesia holds these vital backup routes, they are perfectly positioned to become a major maritime powerhouse in the coming years. 70%. That is Taiwan's staggering monopoly on global microchip production. Think about it. The tech inside your phone, your computer, your car, it almost all comes right through the Taiwan Strait. This isn't just another shipping lane. It is a potential trigger for World War III. The entire globe completely relies on this tiny island's output passing safely through this one specific door. Zooming out geographically, this whole situation turns into a super high-stakes chess match. See, China's physically blocked from the open Pacific Ocean by this chain of islands running from the Philippines through Taiwan right up to Japan. And the surrounding waters, they're too shallow for their submarines to pass through undetected. So, strategically speaking, China desires Taiwan to gain direct, unbroken coastline access out to the deep Pacific. Conversely, the US and its allies have a really profound interest in keeping the strait open as international waters, making sure their naval vessels can pass through freely and supporting Taiwan. It is basically a pure geographic deadlock. Finally, Section 5, Panama and Routes of the Future, Human Engineering and Climate Change. So before human intervention, ships sailing from New York all the way to San Francisco had to take this freezing, super dangerous, month-long detour through the Strait of Magellan at the very bottom tip of South America, just constantly battling terrible storms. Then humanity literally cut the land in half to create the Panama Canal. This rapid, highly engineered shortcut connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and honestly, it's a massive secret to the incredible speed and reach of the U.S. Navy and commercial fleets today. The Panama Canal's lock system is an absolute engineering marvel. Here is how it works. Step 1. They enclose the ship and pump in water to physically raise it up. Step 2. The ship crosses right over the inland mountainous terrain. And Step 3. They lower the ship back down to sea level on the other ocean side. I mean, it's genius, but there is a modern catch. Climate change and dropping water levels are currently causing massive issues here. If there isn't enough water to actually raise the ships, we might be forced to send our massive global cargo ships right back down to that treacherous, freezing Strait of Magellan. Speaking of historic backup routes, let's talk about the Cape of Good Hope at the very bottom of Africa. Now, it's not a narrow strait, but it is a critical turning point. It's the exact route Vasco da Gama famously sailed. And whenever modern choke points like the Red Sea or the Suez Canal fail, whether that's due to a stuck ship or Houthi attacks, this centuries-old passage suddenly becomes the most vital, albeit incredibly long, detour on Earth. Let's look to the future for a second. For the past century, the Bering Strait, positioned right between Alaska and Russia, has been completely frozen solid and mostly impassable. But in the present day, due to global warming, that ice is rapidly melting. Fast forward just 20 to 30 years from now, and this is going to be a brand new, highly contested, fast-track shortcut linking Asia directly to Europe and the Americas. The geopolitical scramble to control this new door has already begun between the major powers. Bringing it all together, 10 out of 14. Of all the crucial global doors we just explored today, the United States currently maintains a direct or indirect military and strategic presence over 10 of them. This is the hidden architecture of modern geopolitical supremacy. Controlling the geography, quite literally, means controlling the world. Which leads us to a massive question to end on. As the ice melts and new doors open, who will control the Bering Strait? The shifting of that ice and the geopolitical maneuvering happening right now will absolutely determine who the global boss of the next century is going to be.